It's Wednesday, February 12th. We're going to start this morning with just an overview of what the Department of Forest does. I know we have capital projects. We have some line items that are being requested, but Forest and Parks is unable to really go and talk about those because there was a family situation with one of the folks that was scheduled to come in. So we're going to reschedule that. But for the committee, if you're interested, it is one item is on section 10, is line 100, which deals with their access into their state parks. And then the other items are in section 9, which is lines 87 and 88. It deals with their infrastructure and improvements to their state parks. We're not going to get into those particular line items and the amount of money that the government has requested in the capital budget, but Forest and Parks wanted to come in just to give an overview of what the Department of Forests and Parks does and how our state parks operate, the flow of their money, because you depend on revenues from fees that you charge at our state parks and how that funds your program. So I'm going to turn it over to the Commissioner of Forest Parks. Welcome.
Thank you. For the record, Danielle Fitzko, Commissioner of Forest Parks and Recreation. I appreciate your understanding and flexibility as you had to make some adjustments due to family emergency. But I'm happy to come in and talk to you about FPR. So we'll just be an overview of all of our programs, and I'm happy to go into any specifics that you have. We are fortunate that our name, Forest Parks and Recreation, kind of tells you what we do. We're all about forests. 76% of the state is forested. We are forest strong. We'd like to celebrate that. And our forestry division does a lot to help keep our forests intact, healthy, resilient, and sustainably managed. Go a little bit more into each of our divisions and what they do and give you some more background. We're also Vermont State Parks, 55 developed parks. This year, we welcomed over 1 million visitors to our parks, and we can go into that a little bit more. And we're outdoor recreation, and today, Outdoor Recreation Day. So you'll feel the buzz all around the State House today. A press conference at 11 o'clock. So our program, we also have a business office too. So those are 3 sort of programmatic divisions. We have Division of Forests, we have State Parks, we have Lands Administration and Recreation. And we also have a business office, which I like to think about as our circulatory system of the department. If you can imagine, state parks is like running a business within state government. We buy a lot of ice, we buy a lot of toilet paper, we purchase a lot of stuff, and we do a lot of contracting. So our business office supports that. I think last year we processed over 11,000 invoices, millions of dollars in contracting out. I think last year State Parks alone had over 120 different contracts out. So really doing business all across the state. Our business office, honestly, for the past couple of years has been underwater, but we've really worked hard to build that up. And now I'm really proud of how our business office does function. We have about 135 year-round staff. And then in the summertime, we really blow up and bring on about 450 seasonal staff, mainly to operate our world-class Vermont State Park system. I'll go into our divisions a little bit more to give you the breadth, and I'll start off with the Division of Forest, which is actually our biggest division with year-round staff. Probably don't know all they do because they're in the woods, right? But we have a private lands program. 80% of Vermont's forests are privately owned. So our private lands team works with landowners. Mainly, they administer the use value appraisal program. I'm sure you've heard of current use. And there's about 16,000 parcels enrolled in current use and over 2 million acres in the forest land category. A lot of work goes into administering that program, but they are available to any private landowners. I think each year they do a lot of education and outreach, and last year they gave over 300 different presentations just talking about the value of forests, getting people to understand management and what they can be doing on their land to be good stewards. The best part about it is when they get out in the land, walking with the landowner and sharing their knowledge with them. We also have a state lands program. The Agency of Natural Resources manages over now up to 370,000 acres of public lands. This is an area where we do have a capital line item to support infrastructure on state lands, particularly think about like parking lots, some of the roads, our trail networks. We have fire towers. There are structures on state lands. This is outside of developed park areas. We do long range management planning and a lot of stewardship to welcome people to Vermont state lands. And if you think about, it's such a difficult challenge as we try and manage all the different uses that people want and the different values of Vermonters. So it's a real sort of challenging but really rewarding part of the work. We also have a watershed forestry program, and they mainly focus on working for forestry operations, making sure when we're doing forest management, when loggers are out there, that we're protecting water quality. And there is actually also a line item in the clean water funds looking at how do we implement best management practices on state lands to protect water quality on our 600 and some miles of state forest parks and access roads. We have a urban and a community forestry program. That's where I was raised within the department. I've been with the department over 20 years. I'm technically like an urban forester. Kind of lost that skill, to be honest with you. But that program really works with municipalities, developed areas, greening the gray, maximizing the benefits of trees. Look around here. This is urban forestry. They do a lot of grants out to municipalities, really helping them understand how to manage trees and plan for increased canopy cover in the long run. We also have a forest protection team, which has really two branches. There's forest health, and they really look at the long-term health of our forest. They actually get up in a plane every year and then monitor and look for like, are there any areas where we have defoliation? And thinking about the threats of our forest, we have long-term monitoring plots. Overall, health of our forests are great, but there's certainly some challenges with introduced species like emerald ash borer. We have new leaf beach disease, and certainly we're looking out for that change in climate and the impact, particularly with like extreme weather events. And then I'm going fast. Am I okay?
You're good.
Okay. We also have a wildland fire team, which is actually a small program, only 3 staff. Used to be 2 staff at only 20%, but we've been recognizing the increased risk of wildland fire and have been looking to bolster up that program. Now we have 3 full-time staff. And I'm grateful we've been looking at this because this fall, it was a hot fire season, really. We had, it was extended drought in the south. While it was wet in the north, we were drought in the south, and we had a really high fire risk this past fall. We were activated on 9 different fires across the state. And what that means is when municipalities sort of reach their capacity and they need assistance, we go out and support them. And that means we may even need to call in assistance from other states. And we did this year. We brought new resources in from New Hampshire to help us manage a fire in Brandon that was like 52 acres, but took us 2 weeks to put out. And we also brought in federal resources from the Green Mountain National Forest. So we are looking at how do we increase more of our capacity here in wildland fire, just recognizing the risk. I think we were pretty lucky this past fall. Massachusetts, Connecticut, New Jersey, Pennsylvania had some pretty active fire season. We aren't seeing like a trend in more fires and more acreage, but it was definitely more intense.
Mhm.
We had 99 wildland fires this past year. How many do you think were naturally caused?
3.
1.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
Human, it's us. Some of them were wood ashes not being disposed of properly, campfires, cigarette butts. So we do a lot of work on prevention as well. And there were 200 acres that burned this year. So just an area of us looking at how do we increase our capacity going forward. And then we have a forest economy program, and they work with the business sector, really actually even from landowners, thinking landowners, foresters, loggers, truckers, sawmills, secondary manufacturers like furniture makers, and then the end user, which is us. And so they work across that whole supply chain. In Vermont, our forest economy direct benefit data we have from around 2017, we're updating it now, is $1.3 billion of economic activity to the state, employs about 9,000 people directly, and then indirectly, it's about 2.1 billion and 13,000 people employed in the forest sector. This sector has faced a lot of challenges in recent years, aging workforce, really higher cost of doing operations, cost of getting equipment, trucking, fuel expenses, energy, everything is going up for them. In 2022, the General Assembly, requested that FPR develop a long-term strategic plan for the forest product sector. So we did that. It's called the Vermont Forest Future Strategic Roadmap. It's a 10-year vision and how we create a prosperous forest product sector and a thriving forest economy. We have an implementation steering committee that meets monthly and has helped to move that forward. And we've done a lot of good work. We found some additional funding, loan programs to support the industry, low interest loans so they can buy equipment. We've got additional grant funding to do demonstration plots. We're looking at innovation. So we are actively moving to really support that sector, which is so important to Vermont. So that is the vision of forest. We like to say we like to keep Vermont forest strong. Any questions on the forestry team?
Questions, thoughts?
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, no, I would just say, Commissioner, I hang out with a lot of state employees, and I got a chance to spend some time with some Stillwater employees recently, and a lot of people, they'll badmouth their boss or something. But I want to say, like, to a person, everybody said such kind things about you, and they've experienced some tragedy there too, and how you were hands on the ground when all that happened, and it was really just a testament to the work you do, and that means a lot, I think, when you hear employees talk about the top level like that.
Thank you for sharing that. I'm so fortunate, to work for FPR. The team here is absolutely outstanding. We have such a wonderful culture and can-do teamwork attitude, and I feel like probably most people in state government or probably everywhere feel like they're under resources, and our employee engagement results are really stellar until it gets to like work-life balance, because there's a lot to do, but they care, so deeply mission-driven team. So it's a treat for me to be where I'm at.
Other questions? Thoughts?
Just one really quick thing.
Yeah.
You said greening the gray. What does
Yeah.
that mean?
That means, like, if I look around in like developed areas, we call it the gray infrastructure, like our roads, our buildings. And then how do we actually bring in the green infrastructure of trees and other vegetation, and thinking about the benefits that green vegetation does for the gray, stormwater management, air quality, habitat even. So I would say it's kind of like green the gray. Used to do a lot with green infrastructure and stormwater management and past.
Right. Wood.
Absolutely, total. The heat island effect is real. We have partnered with the Department of Health, and they identified communities across the state that have heat-related illnesses. And then we work in those communities to actually provide free trees to landowners in those communities. And then we have a cool app that we work with the Arbor Day Foundation, where they can actually, where's the best place to plant the tree? And we've been working on that for 6-7 years, and we've gotten ARPA funding to do that, and also money from the Department of Health, just recognizing that trees have a health benefit. Yeah, thanks.
How do people know how to access that? Through the municipalities?
Well, when we're actually working in a community, we try and actually work with partners that work with those vulnerable populations. So we reach out to the people who are connecting to those individuals. So it's different in each community who those partners are. And most recently, We've started actually going in with the schools as well, so they can have sort of a hands in and helping work with the landowners and help plant trees. So it's been it continues to evolve as we learn how to like make sure we're planting the trees in the best place and reaching the right population. Because when we originally did it, we like posted on social media, put it out there, and we weren't actually hitting the population we wanted to, the most vulnerable. So we've been adapting.
What's your biggest challenge?
And what overall?
When you come to work, what's on the top of your mind as far as
My biggest challenge is honestly, it's the team. They've got a lot to do, and I try and figure out how to plow the way. Yeah,
Thank you.
because everyone's doing really good work, passionate. I think one of our biggest challenges is sometimes we've lost public trust a little bit, it feels like, in how we manage state lands, and that stings a little.
Thank you.
Maybe you can go into a little bit, oh, sorry, James.
I was just gonna ask, what do you mean by that? Like lost public trust?
When we're managing public lands, we do long-range management plans and we ask for public input in the scoping process, and then we develop the plan and ask for feedback on those plans. And we get great involvement, which is exactly what we want. But sometimes people don't like what we do, particularly maybe with forest management. The staff that are in charge or oversee our forest management are, I think, real leaders in how we do it. Thinking about, our forests aren't old forests here. We do have some. But it's been with clear cut, and we have, I'd say, young adult forests, and they need some stewardship management if we're trying to think about how do we get resilient, complex forests for the future. And they really think in our leaders and how we do that. And we have been challenged saying we shouldn't do anything, and that kind of hurts their professionalism, really. And we actually, our management of state lands, it's not just foresters, it's recreation specialists, it's water quality, it's habitat, it's fisheries, it's the ecologists. Everybody comes to the table and thinks about what is the best approach for how we manage state lands. It is a multidisciplinary agency team approach. And I think it's a model nationally, honestly. And it takes a lot of time to do it. But when you get some people saying you're doing it wrong, I think it hurts.
I didn't know if there was some like outcry that I hadn't seen, just as more of the just
Yeah.
different or tone that's there. Okay.
A lot of people love it. I would say majority of people appreciate the way we manage land, but there's
I got you.
Can't keep everyone happy.
it's almost like there's always going to be a little, you can't keep everybody happy, right?
One thing too, it could be something as simple as a lake where people have always had access to it and can park on the road. And then all of a sudden there could be a plan to do a parking lot, and the ones who have accessed this give some pushback in terms of, if you do a parking lot, you're gonna bring in a lot of people, and then it's gonna change the environment. So us having access to this lake, that's happened.
Happen it will be.
A lot of
No, this is smaller
Oh,
lakes.
smaller.
Yeah.
Certainly we in Willoughby too, like for us, like a lot of times we have state lands that are just loved. And in order for us to protect the resource and to manage the people, we end up having to need to put infrastructure in.
Yeah.
And Willoughby a lot of the work was capital funded. We're grateful for that because we had to expand parking because people were parking on the roads. We needed to harden up the trails because of the heavy use. And that's just real people management. And we want people to be outside and recreating, but there's a balance of like, here's how it was and what is it going to look like in the future. And so we try and strike that. I call it striking the balance, really. And it's hard.
You have something, Joe?
Well, no, just
Okay.
when can we anticipate seeing or hearing testimony on the actual?
Well, we had scheduled that today, and there was a family situation, so we can't get in. We've rescheduled that. But at least they wanted to come in and give an overview.
Which is great.
So that's what we're doing.
I think we're coming next
week.
Thursday is the day we can get into the line items.
A situation occurred yesterday, so.
Yeah.
Right.
Schedule just kind of blew up.
You probably would have left with more unanswered questions because I can't answer them. Frank's our expert here is not able to be here.
So, we come in contact as legislators a lot through the state parks. Many of us have a state park,
Yeah.
either in our district or neighboring districts. You know, they could be the campgrounds, it could be the lakes, whatever. And I don't know if folks have questions about that, but that's all managed with Forest and Parks.
Yep.
And you also have, they're not wildlife management areas. Those are more in your fish and wildlife, but I'm thinking of the champion lands up in
Yes.
the Northeast Kingdom and how you manage that, how controversial that was
Yep.
when that was all proposed for the state to take that over. How many state parks do you have, as well as state lands that you're managing
Yep.
that are not state parks, but they're under your stewardship?
Yep, that's state parks is next on my list to sort of go into that. But so there's 370,000 acres overall for the Agency of Natural Resources. Within FPR, I'd say about 190,000 acres that we oversee the management of that. So that includes state parks and state forests. For state parks, that developed area, we say 55 state parks that we really welcome visitors to that have established operations, which are all over the state. And we like to say there's a state park within 20 minutes of every Vermonter. And then the vast majority of the land that we manage is more like open access recreation lands. Think about Camel's Hump and Mount Mansfield and all those other areas all across the state. We also support easements on private lands through a Forest Legacy Program, which is a federal program through the U.S. Forest Service. And we have about 108,000 acres of easements that we manage. The land is privately owned, but we hold the land interest. And we monitor those lands on an annual basis to make sure they're being good stewards about what's in the easement. So that's sort of the portfolio. When we're looking outside of Vermont state parks, it's mostly recreational trails, forest management, habitats management. I can get into a little bit more about Vermont state parks because I have that sort of data here. So we have,
Before you get into that, this race is when you talked about the easements. This race is,
are we having something come to you?
are you going to have a resolution for any land swaps or easements this year?
No, we are not. So basically, for background, if FPR has land, if we are owned for the state land and we want to change interests, say we're swapping a piece of land because it makes more sense for us to have an inholding and a landowner, we come to your committee to share that and get your feedback on
We
that.
need to give approval.
Yeah.
That the legislature needs to give approval. So I've asked enough questions.
So Vermont State Parks, crown jewel in the state, I said 55. I'll just give you a little bit of stats on this. I have to look. 39 campgrounds, 2,200 campsites, 51 cabins, 29 beaches, all across the state. Over 1 million visitors this past year and last year since what, 2000, like, I don't know, when we went up, we've gone up about 40% in our visitation rates, which is huge. Considering the past 2 years to even be over 1 million when we were hit very hard by the past 2 summers of flooding, which we shut down. Camp Plymouth was shut down pretty much all last year. Groton got hit really hard this year. Brighton was closed down. The year before was, as we all know, was pretty wet the whole season, and we still were able to hit that $1 million visitation, which is great. 80% of our visitors are Vermonters, and then half of our day visitors. So we have day use and we have overnight are Vermonters, and half of our visitors are from out of state. So that 40% increase within the past 6 years. What people probably don't recognize about Vermont State Parks, because it's all over the state, is the infrastructure that we have. Our infrastructure assets are about $280 million. So think about all the toilet buildings, all the buildings and facilities that we have. You know, we sort of have the front of the house infrastructure. That's sort of the buildings, campsites, lean-tos, cabins. And then there's the back of the house sort of support that we have. Thinking we have wastewater systems, portable water systems. We have 40 miles of underground, like, piping. So there's just a lot that people don't recognize because we're dispersed.
Just to go back to the numbers, just to make sure I understand it. So 80% of the people just go for the day, couple hours, whatever. That's Vermonters, right?
Yeah.
So you're saying 50% of the total, like multi-day or single days out-of-staters?
Out-of-staters.
Okay, just make sure.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Thank
And when we're thinking about, you asked about sort of how Vermont State Parks are funded. Most of it's through admissions into the parks. I'd say 75% is through admissions into the parks. We have some general funds, not very many, but we do have some general funds that come in. And then we also have a relationship with ski leases. There's 7 ski leases on state lands. A portion of sales of receipts that where the lifts are on state lands, we get a portion of that. And we like to think of that as that sort of lease revenue is sort of that Vermonter sort of payment. I will say that visitation's great at 1 million, but the past couple of years were not going up because of, I think, the weather related, and costs are going up. Our operating costs are just, it's real, and staffing costs and also just prices of everything.
I want to get into your admission fees, what you charge for admissions supports our
Yeah.
parks. Do you set those fees internally every year, or does that need legislative approval?
They're set through rule.
Through rules, through the Department of Forest and.
Yes, and I will share that we just recognizing, this is the 100th anniversary, by the way, of Vermont State Park. So we're celebrating that till April. So you're in it right now. And as part of that 100-year celebration, we just did a parks modernization study that looked at like, what do we need to modernize our parks for like the next 100 years? One of them was our funding structure. And one of the recommendations was we should be more dynamic in our pricing structure. Like, is it a busy weekend? Say it's July 4th weekend, the demand is greater. We should have that flexibility to do that, which is not the way it currently is right now.
I was like, you could charge more those weekends.
Yeah.
So you do that through rules that you promulgate within your department?
We go through ICAR and LCAR.
That was.
Yeah. Yeah, we go through rulemaking.
Go through, and that's the only way you change your admission fees. It's no legislation needs to occur on a 3-year cycle.
Yeah. Okay.
Because like, for years, my family went to Green River Reservoir and now you can't get in. And as far as I'm concerned, if that was a business model that I was in charge of, that whatever it is, $17 a night would double.
And
Because there is
You can't get in because of that. People.
It's very popular.
there is, if you don't call a year ahead of time at Green River, you don't get a campsite.
Yeah.
And to me, that's an indicator of like, let's make some money there. That at least I know I'm
There's a trade-off, right? We want it to be equitable and like,
correct, but it's a lot out of staters too. And it's people who definitely have the money for the weekend to go up there and canoe in and, kayak in. So anyway, I just,
we hear you on this one, and part of the modernization study, our consultant did look at what other states do, and other states charge way more than we are for out-of-staters. I think we want to make sure, like for Vermonters, we keep it reasonable. It's a really good, accessible outdoor vacation for many. But we do need to think about how do we sort of raise additional revenue. So we've been thinking about that. There's also some options. We have not done RV hookups. There may be some options for that. We've also talked about kiosks and like gates where you self-service. And then another thing is our season. Our season could extend. We are sort of bound really by our seasonal employment within state government is like a 7-month employment window. If we can expand that a little bit, we can branch out on the shoulders because people are still coming and we welcome them year round, but we're not able to do any sort of emissions because we're not providing the service where I think people would still want it. So we have some ideas that we're thinking about.
Say it's a balance.
Again, a balance, yeah. We're not set on anything right now. We're thinking through some options.
Is there a way to I'm just thinking of the winter months and the land that you have, is there a way to encourage folks to come up for snowshoeing, cross-country skiing, that type of thing?
There's a lot of people that do that. One of the, our state lands are very active. I mean, right now, people are all over the place, cross-country skiing,
Mhm.
backcountry skiing. snowshoeing. One of the things we have talked about, like high use areas that are not in a state park where we don't have those gated areas, donations or putting up, in other states, what they do is they have QR codes, like think about Willoughby or Camel's Hump, really high use areas that we get a lot of demand, but we aren't able to staff it or manage it really as well. And people may be willing to give some donations there or pay for parking. I mean, these are just options because the reality is it costs us money to put in the infrastructure to manage it. And so there are other ways to raise some funds. Which is, demand is growing. Outdoor Recreation Day, I mean, the pandemic, we know increased people's going outdoors and they're staying.
Well, what are people asking for with our state parks? Are they like, I know one thing we've invested in a lot over the past few years are rustic cabins. Because the clientele is changing a little bit and they don't want to just put up a lean-to or whatever they want. Or structure
Yeah.
around it. What other things are you seeing that the public would?
I'll start and maybe Nate can fill in, but certainly sort of that diversity of more like cabins are hit, they go. We also want to be, and we should be able to ask for more accessibility. So we have lean-tos in other areas where all types of people can access a lean-to or campsite. So we're looking at how to increase accessibility. And I think they want amenities. Honestly, they really like bathrooms matter. I will share that in Sandbar State Park,
It's a quarter of the week.
I think we have 1,200 toilets or something like that. Like you don't realize it. Sandbar up in the islands, we worked with the community and redesigned sort of the entrance and gateway into it. Not much, but that's what the community said. They wanted first safer to get in, better parking. And we saw 33% increase in visitation this year. So they like they like that and they come. Now, you want to add anything, Nate?
I think you covered it great. I mean, it's amenities. People want free hookups. They want cabins, cottages. They love a place where they can camp or it's their home base for getting out in the backcountry or doing events in the local community. Wi-Fi, folks really want Wi-Fi. So all those things that traditionally weren't a big part of who we are, but one thing we found through this parks modernization study, which was a deep dive into the park system, it took over 1.5 years, and they looked at everything, how we're organized, how we're financed, funding, and what the future looks like. And it looks different than what it looks like now, although people really, really appreciate who we are. So we don't want to change that. But folks want more amenities.
So for the RV hookups, is that just power and sewage
Mostly power and water.
and water?
And electricity is a big challenge for some of our cabin development and the RV hookups. Many of our parks just don't have the service yet into the park, but throughout the park, they can handle more higher amperage need.
So those are sometimes some things that we get involved in the committee when you talk about infrastructure upgrade and using bonded dollars for items such as that. Could be.
Mhm. Yes, the committee's been fantastic to us. I can update you too, because you've been aware of, in order for us to manage all that infrastructure, we have a facilities team, really the plumbing, electricity, like the maintenance of all this. And you helped us with building the Groton maintenance shop, which is not Groton, Gifford Woods, which is going up now. And we hope to start Groton soon. And if we get funding next round, that'll be part of that next phase. But we need to be able to have the people that do the work behind the scenes, that's servicing the front of the house, have really all that need to do that. And it's pretty aging.
I think that's a really important point, that we have not invested in our sort of back of the house facilities as much as we would have liked over the years. And the last thing I'll mention about what folks are looking for going forward and what the study points out loud and clear is accessibility. Accessible trails, accessible facilities, accessible beaches.
Mhm.
You know, the ADA piece is just gonna be more and more important to move forward.
You have something, Jake?
Well, two things. One, it made us giggle, but bathrooms are important. You think about maybe like Smugs or something, or you know, the Notch, and if the bathrooms that are up there, it's a godsend. But what exactly? This is gonna sound dumber than a box of rocks. Sorry. What does an accessible trail look like if you're climbing a mountain or even on flat ground? How do you make that happen? Like, what does it look like, or is there something it looks?
No, there are accessible trail standards, and I think at first it starts with the parking and sort of the trailhead, making sure that it has all the infrastructure in case. I mean, we are seeing like mountain bikers and wheelchair accessible. We try and make trail, but not all can be like that. But it's sort of the pitch, sort of the grading, all needs to be considered. Now, not everything's going to be accessible, but there are areas that we can make it accessible for people to get out there.
Do we have some?
Mm.
Like, do we have some?
Yep, certainly we do. If you're thinking about, you said Smuggler's Notch, there is an ADA accessible trail just past the visitor center by Barnes Camp.
Okay.
It's like a mile and a half long, at Little River State Park. Another thing we're doing is getting wheelchair, like beach wheelchairs, so that can go over the sand and into the waters, that they're available. And sometimes we don't have a lot, we can move them around, but sometimes we lay a mat out so they can get down to the water. So we're really trying to think about multimodal almost ways to get out there. And then also language access. We have now I speak cards, so if people can't need help, we have cards and we can access like language translation right away. And even like add our trailheads and our information, we want to make sure people have access to it. So sort of a broad area of expansion. Another area that was highlighted in the modernization study is our climate resilience. We have certainly some parks that will continue to flood. Camp Plymouth is one of them. We're doing a lot of work there. And we need to identify those areas and work on those improvements, which we are adapting our rebuild and what it looks like. But also we have a responsibility to lower our footprint as well, thinking about how we incorporate solar and other sort of heating, wood heat and other things that we can be doing. So that's sort of two sides of what we're thinking about too.
The language stuff. So are you talking about like having like a trailhead be in English, but then also like, French for our Canadian friends, and then like Spanish and
I think there will, I don't know sure exactly what's all going to be on. I don't think we can put everything on there, but I think we can get things translated. And then if you need help interpreting, our parks staff have a card that they can access direct translation if we need it.
Perfect.
Do you know, Nate, if we'll be on trailheads?
I mean, we have some signs that are in French and English or in Spanish, and then there'll be QR codes for the translation and interpretation if you need other.
Excellent. Thank you.
I learned that. That's great.
Should be important for your Wi-Fi issue, right? Because if you can't access the net, how's your Q card?
Yeah.
Your cellular or, yeah.
A lot of areas where there's not great cell service right now. Well, so I'll just quickly add is one of the most important things we do, and that's was borne out by the public involvement we had in the modernization study, is connecting people to nature. And we have over 50,000 visitors who come every year for our nature programs, and that's a big part of folks' experience in state parks. And really, we all know it's more and more difficult to keep kids engaged outdoors and keep people connected to the landscape. And that's a big part of what we do, and that's a big part of what folks want to see us continue to do.
I will also share that State Parks has a great relationship with the nonprofit group Vermont Parks Forever. And they really work to raise funds to bring those that may not be able to afford or have access to state parks, raise funding so that we have more populations being able to access state parks. One of their new initiatives they're working on is, EBT cards. It's actually like putting access for day use areas on EBT cards, which is great. So they've been a fabulous
I
partner.
understand that. Can you repeat that?
It's what is EBT?
I know what it means.
Oh yeah, so
What did you say?
so the Vermont Parks Forever is raising funds so that those who hold EBT cards have a certain amount where they can use them at Vermont State Parks to get access in, paid admission.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Do you also work with the Youth Conservation Corps? YCC?
Yes, quite a bit. We have a very strong partnership with VYCC. We actually have, they have a staff person there that directly works on state lands and primarily in state parks. It's what's the program called?
Parks Restoration Crew, PRC crew.
They do a lot of work for us all across our 4 districts and state parks, from painting, lean-to development, and it's a great trade sort of, they can do everything for us from, they actually do like hazard tree, they have a forestry crew that does hazard tree removals, they do trail building, they do facilities, they can do plumbing, they can do so they've really expanded their programming through the Serve, Learn, Earn program, which is a partnership with Audubon, Vermont Works for Women, Rebuild Vermont, a fabulous program, and we're able to access all that on state lands and mainly through Vermont State Parks. And we see it as a win-win. It's next workforce development, and we are able to provide sort of that oversight that I think VYCC welcomes.
They're a huge partner. It's really important.
And do you also have folks from AmeriCorps at all? Do you reach out to AmeriCorps to help maybe with those swing seasons that you can't find? You know, because staffing your state parks, you usually have retired couples that will come in and it's there from May until October. But if you want to expand, is that time with AmeriCorps help at all?
That's something we could explore. We haven't done them really on Vermont State Parks. They have gone to other program areas because it's usually like an 8 to 9 month sort of,
Right.
like term that they support. We also get a lot of young, it's like sort of like they're coming in younger and it's like their first job. And it's like, we like to say, come try Vermont. And they come back for years and some stay. Then you have those that have retired. And then you've got that sort of college age that they leave us on the fringe too, which is difficult. We have been, the modernization study recognizes that we're very heavy on seasonal staff, lighter on year-round staff, about 43 year-round staff. And so we're trying to change that balance a little bit. Other states have more year-round and less seasonal. Then they can also bridge those shoulder seasons as well with year-round staff. Because the work doesn't end, because like you close down, then you're opening up again. So it's like, there's always something to do in that time when you're actually not in operation. A lot to do.
Our biggest connection with the AmeriCorps program is through the Youth Corps, Conservation Corps.
Oh, wait, they are.
State parks. I can't say enough about that seasonal workforce. We have 450 positions every year, and a lot of what we do is recruit, hire, train, and support those folks. And our training program is pretty fantastic. We have folks that come from New York State Parks, New Hampshire State Parks, Maine State Parks to participate in our program and can learn from us. But it's a huge task for our full-time staff is supporting that seasonal workforce. And 50% of our park managers come in from out of state, and a lot of them end up loving Vermont and staying. And 3/4 of our management team, we all moved to Vermont to work in state parks and state. Some of us a long time here.
And most of them, I think all of our managers at one point maybe were VYCC.
We used to have some park managers from VYCC.
Yeah, it's a good relationship.
Sean?
Just quick, so I was over at Associated General.
I was there too.
Oh, right. So what's that? So they were all there.
Yeah.
So what's that connection?
That is Serve, Learn, Earn. And that is,
Okay.
so VYCC is one of the pillars
Right.
of organizations in there. And so that sort of VYCC connection is really, Serve, Learn, Earn is that umbrella of several organizations. So we work with VYCC, which is part of the work that connects to state parks.
Right. Okay, gotcha. Are they based out of that building?
No.
They were just hanging out there, just presenting.
Yeah.
Okay.
There was
I
a focus
just-
on timber framing, and that is a new skilled trade that VYCC is training youth in or young adults in timber framing, which is fantastic.
Thanks.
They're based out of their headquarters in Richmond.
Okay, right. Okay, that's right.
Monitor bond. Yeah. I feel like I've been rambling a lot. Yes.
Well, it's been a good overview.
Yeah,
You know,
very interesting.
so that we can understand more what your department is doing. So when we look at the line items that are being requested, of course, we have some concept.
Yeah, yeah, there's 3 line items for us, just so for awareness when we come back. There's one directly for state parks, so that inside the developed areas, that's the infrastructure needs. Then there's one for outside of state parks, all those trails and fire towers and other pieces that are not in developed state parks. And then there's a small line item in the water quality budget that's for water quality improvements on all state lands. That goes beyond just FPR, actually.
I'll just add one other thing. It is kind of alarming, as you can all imagine, the rate at which expenditures are now outpacing our revenue stream. And we really strive to be affordable for everybody, not out of state, so they want to come and spend the money in Vermont.
Like your $17.
Right.
Yeah, right. And we have room to grow for sure.
Yeah.
But contracts, those 130 contracts that we have that Danny mentioned, that across the board, those have gone up 40%. You know, things like signs, publications, staffing, it's almost doubled. You know, all those costs are just really hard to nitpick and, you know, filter out too much, the kind of the nature of what we do. And we do have to work hard to come up with a package for financial stability.
Do you get a lot of general fund support?
No, not much. We have gone up a little bit recently. It was a couple of years ago, it was about 600,000. I think maybe a little over 1 million right now.
That's what you get from the general fund from the state budget.
Most of it is admissions at state parks and then the ski leases. And then we're grateful because none of the funds that we have bring in really goes to our capital needs. And so that's the capital bill is huge for us to be able to meet the actual, even just maintain what we have, but for anything new is huge too, but we're trying to just maintain.
So that 1 million that you get from the general fund on a yearly basis, that doesn't even meet payroll.
We've gotten that because payroll has gone up quite a bit and it's helping to cover that for us.
So you really function based on your admission fees that are coming in. I think that's important for committee members to know.
Our
Sean,
payroll in July is $700,000 every 2 weeks.
Wow.
so who has?
Go ahead.
Well, mine's easy. Forgot what it was. Oh, yeah. What is the ski leases?
What are they?
Yeah, what are they? No, just what are
Let me
they?
see if I get it right. Jay, Burke, Smuggler's Notch, Stowe, Okemo,
Okay, so it's the big ones. I didn't know if it was something else.
Killington, and Bromley.
Okay, thank you.
And isn't it sort of like a tax on the ski lifts that pay for the lease?
It's depending, each of them are a little bit different, but if there's a lift on state lands, it's a percentage of those ticket prices, 5% of those ticket prices. Luckily, actually, they have been going up. They weren't for a little bit, but a little bit better.
What's been going up?
The revenue we're bringing in from ski leases.
Okay.
Particularly World Cup in Killington.
Okay, this should be a good year, I would think.
Yeah, it should be a good year. But that was Easter maybe this weekend.
Snow, that helps our
Yeah.
revenues.
When we have an opportunity, we do try and, I mean, the leases are long, they're 50-year, 60-year leases.
Hmm.
But if there's a change in ownership, we try and get in there and modernize them a little bit. And if we can, even do like if there's services in the summer now that they're offering, they weren't doing mountain biking
Yeah, they are.
20, 30 years ago, now they are. So we try where we can. But they're pretty much locked in.
Meaning you can't raise
You
their
can't.
rents.
Right.
Unless it comes through here.
Yeah.
You can do it if you come through here.
And and then we can't really open their lease. It's like we have an agreement with them.
Wait, step back, just to explain that. We can't open their lease.
Well, we have a lease agreement with them. So when we try and get in there and modernize them, when there's maybe a sale of a resort and we say, okay, the new buyer coming in, we'd like to open up the lease to modernize it. But the leases are 50 to 60-year long
Or
leases.
99 years.
Yeah.
Do they have a tie into inflation and stuff? Or
No.
Oh, wow.
Wait a minute.
These were done many years ago.
Got a deal.
All right, so wait a minute. So, because I just went to Stratton this weekend.
And how much were you on the state lands for your lifts?
I don't know, but it was $175 ticket. So
And how
there's
much
some,
of the-
somebody's making some money somewhere, and there were thousands of people on that
But it
mountain.
depends how many of those lifts are.
Stratton's not it, but
No, I know, but it just seems like that's low hanging fruit that we could ask. We are dying for money in the
Yeah, well, then
state
you
right
gotta open
now.
up a lease.
yeah,
Okay.
difficult.
I see.
It's difficult because
Yeah.
they have a signed lease.
We're fortunate we have, but
What you have,
So we got,
okay.
so Gina and then Joe.
So I guess this is more a question for you. Do we have the power in this committee to say that we can open leases? Cause like Stowe is like $200 a day now.
I don't think you can do that until it's change ownership. I know we have done it, but there was a change in ownership. And we did look.
Yeah, I don't think we-
Years ago.
we're looking at like the first one up is Bromley in 2032. And so we're going to be looking at what it looks like to modernize when that lease ends and what it looks like going forward. I will share that we have an RFP that we're putting out to take a look at our ski leases to better understand the payments that we're getting in, because now we have multi-resort passes.
Yeah.
And we want to make sure there's transparency and we understand how those are being calculated. So we're looking to hire a firm in to take a look at all 7 leases to better understand that.
So Joe and then Sean.
What was the point? I think a lot of those leases are set up like, 99-year leases on Lake Carmine with 28 years left on them. And it's not a whole lot you should do in many cases.
The best thing you can do when you negotiate a new lease is to have inflation increases tied into inflation.
Those things were set up. There was no tourism here.
The person that's coming next week, could they enlighten us a little bit more about that? Is there more detail? I would just like to know a little bit.
We can certainly share, probably not next week because we're going to be diving into the capital line items, but if you're
Okay.
interested in, we could visit with you or come back.
So is there interest from other committee members about learning more about the leases?
Oh, yes.
Because
Yeah.
is it something we want to spend time as a committee, or should some members who are interested work directly with Forest and Parks to get it?
Or maybe when we've gotten through, the capital bill, maybe later in the session.
No, that would be May, maybe April,
Listen,
probably April.
it's
There's just a
interesting, but I don't think it's
money
money,
on those mountains. So I just think that I would just like to know what if they're using our land, what we're getting out of that, because there's some serious value to that.
So is there interest from all the committee members on this, or is it just some members who are really interested?
If there's movement.
Okay. So we can do this after we get through some
Okay.
major work.
And I'm happy to do a sit down with a few and then we can then come back and so it helps refine.
That'd be great.
I mean, at least for me, I can't speak for anybody else, but even a half an hour overview will help me understand it. And I promise I wouldn't interrupt, but the question I have is, for example, like one of the questions I have is, so if the lease was entered into for skiing, let's just say, and now they're doing mountain biking, is there that a change of use that can open a lease? That kind of stuff.
Yeah,
I mean, not for today, but like something that.
we'll have answers to all that. I think it's pretty difficult, very difficult. I'm not the expert here
Right.
on it, but
Just putting that in the pin
Yeah.
and wherever it goes. But thank you.
So this has been a good discussion. Is there anything else that you wanted to offer?
I would just add the economic engine that one state parks are, state, and a really good example of that is Jamaica State Park down in Jamaica. When we closed that park for 2 weeks because of flooding last year, one of the local businesses said they lost $40,000 because the park was closed.
It was closed for how long? 2 weeks?
Yeah. And it was in peak
In
season.
peak season.
So there are a lot of those small communities that have a state park next to them that really rely on visitors.
thank you all. Appreciate your time and we'll be back next week and maybe even more.
That's great. Thank you.
Yeah.
Really appreciate
Have
it.
a good day.
You too.
Thank you.
We were gonna do reallocation
So, folks, let's take
wanna
a
do that?
10-minute break.
next week.
And
Do you
then-
want to get it done beforehand?
Oh, maybe we could do.
Someone from House Judiciary is coming that in to
Maybe we can just-
introduce H 176.
I think